going to be back at St Mary's on Saturday for the visit of Millwall. After a run of 7 defeats in 8 games, they've sacked Joe Edwards. It looks like former boss Neil Harris is set to replace Edwards as head coach. So it's this really strange situation, Steve, where they've pulled the trigger, and so they've had a manager in between the 2 games that we've played. So because they didn't have a manager last time, did they? It was a caretaker manager, and there was all the rumours about Nathan Jones potentially going in there. So it's a club that's in a bit of a mess at the moment.
It is, and they don't seem to, at board level, they don't seem to know what kind of football team they want to put out on the pitch, because ultimately they got rid of Gary Rowett because everyone was bored of playing dull, negative football, playing for 1-0s and playing the percentages all the time. And so they brought in this young, exciting, progressive head coach rather than a manager, with a view to getting Gary Rowett's dour, negative set piece players playing in a more sort of fluid passing game, and everyone seems surprised that it's not worked immediately. And so they ripped up that idea completely, chucked it in the bin, and gone for a guy who was sacked from a League Two club because his side were dour, defensive, and were playing for set pieces. So
good at those set pieces, though. Very good at those.
Yeah, they were. Well, against us anyway. But then that was a defence consisting of Alex McCarthy and Lianco. So swing. Let's take it for what it was. But they feel like a club that's kind of pressed the panic button, really, because not only have they gone back to the sort of old style that they kind of thought they wanted to get rid of. They've had to pay Cambridge probably a significant amount of money to do so, to get him out of his contract there.
Steve, is Neil Harris the first manager to manage in League Two, League One, and the Championship in the same season?
Quite possibly.
It's not usual, is it? It's not standard.
No, it's very not. No, I mean, I'd be surprised if there were many others, certainly. But yeah, good question.
Great pub stat.
Yeah. But I mean, the thing is, now we don't really know what to expect from them. Which
we do. They'll lock the ball forward, they'll knock it down and try and win the second ball.
Well, they may do, but they may do. But ultimately, I think you would like to think that. I mean, certainly after the last setback against Bristol City, we properly turned up at the Hawthorns and put on a bit of a show and played to kind of the sort of true potential that we have. And you would like to think that there'll be a similar reaction to this time around as well. And having quite rightly, I think, taken a fair bit of criticism for that first half, they'll be wanting to set the record straight. And what better opposition than the side that doesn't seem to be able to defend very well against kind of free-flowing teams. Ipswich were 3-0 up after about 20 minutes at the Den last week. Had the game won very early. I mean, even Sheffield Wednesday went to the Den at the weekend and beat them fairly comfortably. So it seems as if in these tight games they're probably going to be competitive, I think, but against teams who kind of try and be a little bit more sort of forceful in their attacking. They look like they're struggling, and what was it, 7 defeats in 8, I think, and it doesn't look great for them, especially now that, as I say, they press that big red panic button.
You think it's going to be quite some bounce, Alfie, if they're going to get anything out of this? I think I was reading they've lost 11 of their 19 matches that he was in charge. Obviously, they lost at the weekend to Sheffield Wednesday. We are going to have a point to prove, so we're going to have our tails up. It's going to be a tough game for them, and it's a great one for us, really. You couldn't ask for a better fixture.
Yeah, in terms of a game to be able to bounce back and sort of right some wrongs, there literally probably is no better fixture than this in the league at the moment. It's a shame that Millwall Mickey's not available, really, because I would have liked to get his take on the whole situation.
And he would have been on had they not sacked their manager about an hour before we came on. So I think they're all busy re-recording one of theirs. But yeah, our resident Millwall fan sends his regards.
I think there'll be a pretty clear game plan for Millwall and Neil Harris. It will just be to. I mean, they're not going to come and do anything expansive, are they? They're not going to go man to man like Hull did. If they did, they won't have the quality to do it, and they'll be picked apart. So they will sit relatively deep at St Mary's, try and frustrate, and maybe it'll be one of those ones where they come out with something special and they get a point or something. But I'm pretty confident that this is a really good game to turn around. I think there'll be some players coming back into the team who are sort of chomping at the bit, raring to go. And it's a massive chance when you've had a slip up like this and you need to get back on the horse. You have to take the opportunity, and this is a perfect one. So, yeah, well, I mentioned sort of the 7 of the 13 games we have left are against the top half. So these are the ones that without question you have to win.
And there won't be a light show. We're not doing a midweek pod next week,
not.
so there's no there's no excuses. Glenn, back in November, it was Ryan Fraser scored that goal in added time. It was a really late winner. Do you remember that was every couple of weeks, wasn't it? He was scoring like late winners and getting us over the line.
One.
It was, wasn't it?
Was the other one,
it certainly wasn't a classic by any stretch, that game.
No, it was one of those games. I think it was at the sort of fairly close to the start of the undefeated run where we were winning games without really looking like a decent side, if that makes sense. I think that was the time when we were having a lot of possession without necessarily having a lot of shots. I think, from what I remember, Charlie Alcaraz played in that game, so we were still sort of like doing the false 9 thing. We hadn't quite got it all nailed down. I do remember Sulemana playing well in that game, which is one of the few where he's actually looked effective. Yeah, we were the better side. And
their keeper had a good game as well, didn't he? Belkowski, if I remember right.
He made a couple of saves, but we didn't work him particularly hard, And it was like we had all the possession as usual, but we only had a couple of shots, and then we scored a sort of scruffy one in the 94th minute, I think it was. So yeah, I mean, but that was they had. I think it was Adam Barrett in charge because Rowett had just got sacked, and we're led to believe that Neil Harris will be in charge.
It's been
announced. It has been
announced.
So yeah, quite often they sort of like sit in the stands for the first game, don't they? But he's got enough time to have a training session, so I'm sure he'll be in charge of the game on Saturday. I don't really know what to expect, but I mean, the good news is if anyone was expecting them to sort of like, as Alfie was saying, try and play like Hull or Huddersfield, he won't have enough time to get that organised.
Mm-hmm.
So it should be a game where we can go out and play, dominate the ball, and cause some problems. Even if they do try and sit, 10 behind the ball and try and hit a striker. Like when we talked about Hull last week, I sort of said about they have forward players that I was worried about. Millwall don't really have that. So it's about defending set pieces, I think. And as long as we do that, we should be okay.
Interesting, they've got Japhet Tanganga on loan from Spurs, haven't they? Who actually played quite a few games. Was it for Mourinho many years ago for Spurs? Yeah, and he's now on loan at Millwall. So interesting how he gets on.
We're going to do score predictions in just a moment. So if you're watching the live stream, put your score prediction for the weekend in the comments. Just want to come back, Steve, to who starts for us on Saturday. I think we've kind of alluded to Flynn Downs coming back in, all being well. Please, yeah. And I guess maybe the subs that came on at half time.
I think Aribo's got to start. Probably Brooks. Although, I mean, I don't know whether you kind of take the view similar to Ryan Fraser earlier in the season that actually he's more effective off the bench at the moment. And you maybe go with, I mean, personally, I would give Adam Armstrong a break.
Was he injured, Alfie, or was that just tactical at half time?
No mention of injuries. I presume it was just tactical. I mean, he touched the ball, I think, and I may be wrong. I think he touched the ball 12 times in 45 minutes, something like that. So I think it was the right decision.
So maybe have Fraser and either Edozie or Sulemana for on either flank alongside Shea Adams. Obviously, Aribo into midfield. So if you got Downs, then I assume Smallbone plays because it seems as if when Smallbone's fit, Smallbone plays. And the back four, I guess, probably picks itself. So yeah, I mean that seems fine. I mean, the biggest frustration I think from last night was that Bednarek didn't even get close to to that booking that he needed.
My tipping career's over before it even started. What a disaster.
I think we knew that. Glenn, would you agree with that in terms of who comes in? I think like the subs and stuff, and obviously Flynn Downs were hoping we were teased with the fact he might have been okay for Harley. Obviously wasn't. I think Russell Martin has said 2 games might be a bit of a stretch. So I'd certainly like to see that name on the team sheet at 2:00.
Yeah, I mean, I'd start Brooks. I'd also start Fraser, and it'd be a choice between Stuart Armstrong and Smallbone, depending on if Stuart Armstrong's fit enough. Because I do think that was part of the issue with Armstrong yesterday. It was just catching up with him the number of games. Just didn't seemed very leggy. But yeah, I agree with that. I mean, Che Adams has to come into the team, I think. Sekou Mare, he didn't get any service as such, but I don't think he worked particularly hard to make things happen. And
it's frustrating, isn't it, though? Because we were calling for him to start last week. We were talking about, he
very quietly.
And there were murmurs for the first time this season, and
I mean, we were kind of calling. We were kind of calling for it because Adam Armstrong as a central striker doesn't really work. So whilst Che Adams is injured and Ross Stewart is dead, then Sekou Mare probably, having had a couple of okay substitute appearances, he probably deserved to start. But I was frustrated with him on yesterday's game in the first half, and he can have no complaints about getting hauled off at half time. And Adams made a difference, but as Steve was saying earlier, Adams is so inconsistent. He was as bad as it was possible to be against Huddersfield in his last game. But he did make a massive difference when he came on yesterday. So so I hope he starts, and I agree that I think it's time for Adam Armstrong to have a rest, because the last 4 games I think he's been running on fumes a little bit, and even though he always, to me anyway, looks like a player who drifts out of games, there haven't been as many sort of like moments where he's got this goal tally and this assist tally this season, but it seems to have got more and more spread out over the last sort of like 5 or 6 weeks. So he could probably do with the rest. And I mean, because he's played virtually every game. I know he didn't start the FA Cup games, but he's played a lot of games this year. So I think it's fair enough to leave him out. But
I think there's a stat somewhere that says most of his goal involvements are away from home anyway, just to kind of, I think further, someone can pull that out, but just to further like back up your claim that maybe this is the weekend that he sits it out.
Well, this is also like you should be able to beat Millwall at home, regardless of how many changes you make. So even if you make 3 or 4 changes, you should be able to win. So if you're going to rest somebody, this is the time to do it. And bringing in David Brooks, it's not exactly like you're bringing in someone who's not capable, is it? So, I mean, you could probably make the argument that David Brooks will have a better career at a higher level. So I wouldn't be too worried about that.
Yeah. Sulemana's the interesting one, actually. Maybe this could be a game for him. Maybe he could play centre forward.
It just annoys me when he comes on and then you get the away fans tweeting about the X million pounds worth of attacking talent that we've got on the bench and that we can bring on. It's like, well, it's one guy and he's not that great. So
that mean he's any good.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, Man United paid £82 million for Anthony. That's
yeah. No, it's case in point.
Well, he wouldn't get in our team.
Let's do some score predictions. I assume we're all going to pitch in with the win for this. Steve, do you want to go first with yours?
Yeah, comfortable, I think. Couple of early goals, and then we can kind of just drift through, I think. 3-0.
Okay. Alfie?
Yeah, I'm going to go for the exact same as Steve. I think, and this is like sort of, I suppose, one of those famous clippable moments where we all sit here on Sunday and it's like 4-1 Millwall. I mean, but I do think the Saints will be comfortable. I think they'll bounce back. I think there'll be a decent response. And whether it's the most sort of like continuous perform, whether they're all like really working as one, and it's the best performance I've seen or not, I don't know. But I think they'll just have enough and it'll be a 3-0 win.
Okay. And Glenn?
Not quite as optimistic as the guys, because yesterday was that bad. So but I do think we'll win. I do think it'll be relatively comfortable, but I'll go for 2-0. I just think we'll do enough with the amount of games that we've had relatively recently. I think if we get to the point where we're 2-0 up, I don't think we'll be busting a gut to score a third one. Put it that way.
Okay.